Good afternoon. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. We are extremely lucky to be able to have today as our speaker Dr. Temple Grandin. She is here at Emory for tomorrow's graduation ceremony, where she will be getting an honorary degree from Emory. And my name is Larry Young. I am one of the hosts, along with Kathy Rice. We are lucky enough to be co-hosting Temple Grandin here. I am the director of the Emory Silvio Conte Center for Oxytocin and Social Cognition, whose, I know that's a mouthful, but the mission of our center is to try to understand the social brain and maybe how to use that understanding to improve social functioning in disorders like autism. So I will introduce Temple. Temple, actually at an early age, probably in high school, understood that she had an interest in animals, particularly in horses, then cattle. She got to go work on her aunt's cattle farm, and she realized that she had a real connection with the cattle. She could understand what they were thinking and things like that. So that led her to go on to college, where she went to Franklin Pierce College, got her undergraduate degree in psychology. Then she went on to Arizona State University after she decided to pursue a career in animal science, got her master's degree there. And then she went on to University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, where she got her PhD in animal science. And now she's a professor at Colorado State University in animal science, and she does a lot of great work consulting with livestock handling facilities, trying to help make them more efficient and more humane. And Kathy is my co-host, and I'll let her finish the introduction.
All right. Thank you, Larry. And again, I second Happy Mother's Day. It's wonderful to have you all here on this busy day for many folks, as well as Emory graduation. It's wonderful that Emory University is honoring Dr. Grandin's wonderful legacy through an honorary degree. I'm Kathy Rice, the director of the Emory Autism Center. For those of you that are not familiar with us, we are a center on the Claremont campus, and we work with individuals with autism and the autism spectrum, from toddlers through adulthoods. We try as best as we can to work closely with each person that we see to provide meaningful supports, teaching functional skills, working on inclusion, and really focusing on practical communication and life skills. We are thrilled to have Dr. Grandin here. I know for many times I've heard her speak. I always learn a lot. I always get pearls of wisdom that are essential, and hope that each of you will as well. And many of you are here because you have experienced that in the past. Dr. Grandin is not only a luminary in terms of animal science, but she's really been a true inspiration across the autism community in terms of what it means to really understand what your interest is, how do you practically put that into practice, and how do you work on taking responsibility for living a good life as much as possible. So we are thrilled to have Dr. Grandin, and we look forward to her speak. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to thank the Emory University Office of the President for their sponsorship of this event, making us free to the public, and also the Yerkes National Primate Research Center, which also did a lot of work helping make this happen. And I just wanted to make two announcements. Please turn off the sound, your ringers on your phone, and also no flash, please, during the presentation. Thank you. Temple?
Great to be here today. Got to get my water. Got to have that. Lots of things to talk about today. When I was a little kid, I was nonverbal. And fortunately, I had a mother that always pushed me, got me into great early intervention. 50s upbringing really helped. Teaching table manners, teaching how to take turns. Going to be talking a little later on about learning how to work. When I was 13, she got me a sewing job. And when I was 15, I was cleaning horse stalls. I figured out I cleaned over 2,000 horse stalls. when I was in high school. Taught me how to work painting signs and selling them. I had lots of work experience before I ever graduated from college. We need to be working on a slow transition from the world of school to the world of work. I cannot emphasize that enough. Sudden transitions are bad. What you got to do with these kids is you got to stretch them. Don't throw them in the deep end of the pool. No sudden surprises, but if you don't stretch, they don't develop. And when I was 15, Mother gave me a choice. I could go to my aunt's ranch for a week and come home if I hated it, or I could stay all summer. I got out there and I loved it. That's how I got involved with the cattle industry. I was exposed to them at 15. Now, it's been an interesting journey for me, learning about how different people think differently. I think completely in pictures. I used to think everybody thought in pictures. I was just talking to a lady last night. I was at a really nice FFA, Future Farmers of America event, and she says, I guess I think in pictures. She thought everybody did. I said, no, not everybody does. But when you realize that different people have different ways of approaching problems, then they can work together. And people say to me, well, what's the first step in doing this? Well, the first step is you've got to realize that maybe everybody doesn't think the same. Well, you know, out in the real world, the techies can never stand the suits. And some of the things I've worked on, I have designed the cattle handling facilities for all the Cargill plants in North America. I think that's doing pretty good for somebody who thought was mentally retarded. I learned a lot from working in construction. You've got to get the job done. That's what you got to do in construction. And I want to see kids like me be successful. I worked with a lot of guys in skilled trades that I know would be labeled on the spectrum today. And they took welding in high school. That ended up saving them. Now, welding's not for everybody, but for some people, it might be just the thing. And there's a big shortage right now, mechanics and welders right now. Huge, big shortage. But the techies always don't like the suits. Now, the suits help you with the organization, but the techies and the artists come up with the really creative stuff. I've noticed an interesting thing in engineering on working on these very large plants. The degreed engineer does not invent the really creative mechanical equipment in that plant. The degreed engineer will do the refrigeration. He's going to do the boilers. He's going to do roof trusses, soil compaction on the foundation. Yep, and we need that. Because us visual thinkers, I don't want to be designing refrigeration. No way. No way I'm going to touch that. But the really creative mechanical things, somebody in the shop makes that. You see, you need both kinds of minds. The layout of the whole entire plant is done by the draftsman. It's not done by the engineer. Then the people in the field are always fighting with the academics, fighting about what is science. Yeah, some people think it has to just be a controlled experiment. Is observation part of science? Well, your commencement speaker tomorrow is an epidemiologist, worked on eradicating diseases around the world. Epidemiology is based on observation. You know, you find an outbreak here, an outbreak here, an outbreak over here, and you piece together how the disease is being spread. It's bottom-up thinking. You look at specific cases, how do they work together? It's not a controlled experiment. I used to fight with my major professor. He said, if it isn't a controlled experiment, it's not science. And the artists have never gotten along with the accountants. Yes, is observation part of science? Yes, it is. As I'd say to him, what about astronomy? The Hubble Space Telescope, very expensive project. It's all about observation. So what would be the control for the Hubble Space Telescope? You point it at the ground. Well, I think it was a spy satellite originally, so maybe it does have a control. Also, another big argument you get is about anecdotal reports not being science. Well, if you're doing epidemiology, you start out, well, there's an outbreak over here, something happened here, something happened here. Then you see common factors. Of course, in my field, Colorado State University, we have a wonderful department in meat safety. And so you have a food poisoning problem with any kind of food. What's the common factor? Did they eat the same thing that came out of the same produce? It's bottom up. You take specific examples, piece them together to figure out the hypothesis for maybe how the food poisoning happened. That is epidemiology. It is a type of science. Now, when I learned that my thinking was different, that gave me a lot of insight. I was shocked one time when I asked a speech therapist to think about a church steeple, and all she told me was vague, pointy thing. I go, pointy thing? There's no pointy thing. I only see specific examples. My concept of what a steeple is made out of specific examples. And then I can sort them into cathedral types, New England types, chapel types. And the more steeples I see, the more elaborate my concept can be. Now, this is one of my most important slides, the different kinds of minds. I am a photorealistic visual thinker. I don't think in words. Everything I think about is a picture. When I mentioned the Future Farmers of America banquet that I was just at, I'm now seeing it. I'm also feeling these little hard seats we had to sit on in the school cafeteria, but there were some really wonderful students there that are really going to go places with that organization. And they learn the discipline running their meetings. Then you have the pattern thinker. This is your mathematician. They don't think in pictures. They think in patterns. Think origami. Think organic chemistry. Now, the object visualizer, like me, is really bad at algebra. So how did I manage to get through college? Well, in 1967, finite math was a required class nationwide. That was the educational fad. Statistics, probability, and matrices. With tutoring, that saved me. But I'm seeing a lot of kids now getting held back by the math requirement. Like somebody wants to take biology, or they want to take welding, and they've got to do algebra as a prerequisite, really, for welding. Yes, we worked on these big, heavy construction projects. You know, putting up a great big Cargill plant or some other plant. You need sixth grade math. You do not need algebra to do this. Now, some of the stuff over there on the refrigeration, they may be needing it. Okay, that's the job for the pattern thinker. This is why you have to have the different kinds of minds. And then you have the verbal fact mind that knows everything about his favorite subject. And some of these kids get hung up on their favorite stuff. If he likes trains, broaden it. Let's learn how a train works. Let's learn the science of it. Let's look at where trains travel to. Let's study some of the destinations that trains go to. I'm making an associative link back to trains. Broaden it. Other people are an auditory thinker. Now, if you don't believe that these thinking types are real, I've written this up in my book, The Autistic Brain, and incidentally, afterwards, we're going to be selling books, and the table is over where the Greek statues are located, the naked Greek statues. I didn't put the book table there. Somebody else did, but that's where it is, and be there signing books. But the different types of minds actually do exist. And when you get a label, autism, dyslexia, ADHD, the kids tend to be good at one thing, bad at something else. Another problem we got with the autism label is you're going all the way from somebody who ought to be working in Silicon Valley. I've been there. They say, oh, people on the mild end of the autism spectrum. They are everywhere there. I've been to NASA. That's where all the older people on the spectrum live. You're going from that to somebody who can't dress themselves. And it all has the same name. And I'm seeing too many people getting totally hung up on the label. Now, what are characteristics of my kind of thinking, visual thinking? It's bottom up. You know, this is why I can really relate to the field of epidemiology. You know, understand that our speaker tomorrow worked on river blindness, guinea worm, all kinds of really horrible diseases. He probably was visualizing different places where these things broke out. And then you find out with a special kind of water filter, you can prevent some of these problems. But that is the bottom-up thinking. I'm getting very concerned that some of our emphasis now in school on just English and math is going to screen out some of these really good visual thinkers, and we need them. It really, really concerns me. It's bottom-up, it's not top-down. Word thinkers are very top-down. One of the big problems I've found, word thinking, is overgeneralization. And they overgeneralize about a child's behavior problems, dog behavior problems. I also see the same problem when they're trying to fix equipment problems at a plant. So we're on startup, and we're starting up one of my systems. Designed a piece of equipment called the center track restrainer system. If you want to see that, you can look up beef plant video tour with Temple Grandin. And we've got our new sheep plant video tour with Temple Grandin. That's where we really did a nice job on that, showing all the food safety stuff. And I find that a word thinker can't differentiate when there's a problem at startup between a glitch, like a stuck trolley, or a really, really severe design fault. You know, when it's a glitch, yeah, you lose the time. Yeah, but we're going to be able to fix the glitch. Visual thinkers notice details. It's sensory-based, it's not word-based. So I tell anybody who wants to work with animal behavior that you've got to get away from language. Don't think about language. What's your animal looking at? And visual thinking is also associative. Now, in my work with cattle, and I got interested in cattle because I was exposed to them at age 15, kids get interested in things they get exposed to for careers. This is why I get so concerned schools have taken out theater, music, art, woodworking, welding, drafting, all of these things that expose students to different careers. And so I noticed that when the cattle were going through a chute at a feed yard to get their vaccinations, they would stop at a shadow. There'd be a coat on the fence, they'd stop. There'd be a chain hanging down, they'd stop. There'd be a vehicle parked next to the facility. They'd see a reflection. Other people weren't noticing that these little distractions affected the movement of the cattle. So you can look here, and they can see the red car through the fence. Uh-oh, now I just pressed the thing that made it disappear. Don't want to be doing that. Okay, animals tend to notice details we tend to not see. Let's see how good you guys are at observation. How many people noticed that that animal was looking at the sunbeam? Please raise your hand if you saw it. Oh, we're doing really good. You're doing almost as good as elementary school children. They did absolutely the best. And then I showed this same slide to a bunch of educators, especially education administrators, more word thinkers. I think 2 hands went up in 600 people. I showed this to mathematicians. Nobody saw it. You see, this is maybe we got a lot of visual thinkers here today because you're doing really well on this. Okay, look at how the zebra and the horse have an ear on each other. What's your animal attending to? What's your animal looking at? You know, when I talk to both animal science and veterinary students, be observant. I want you observing things. Okay. I always get asked, does an animal know it's going to get slaughtered? I get asked that all the time. And don't worry, I'm not going to show you any slaughter pictures. But I had to answer that question really early in my career. So I would go to the meatpacking plant, and then I'd go out to the feed yard. They behave the same way in both places. Stress varies from really high to really low. It has to do with the quality of the management. This brings up another thing. Okay, if you're looking at something, people lots of times want the latest fancy dancy stuff, but they might not have the management to go with it. So what would you rather have? Would you rather have older, adequate facilities with really good management, or have the fancy state-of-the-art, but the management's bad? I'll take the older, adequate facility with a really good management. In fact, last week I went to a chicken processing plant that would have been in that category. Older facility with good management. Now, lots of times cattle won't approach visible people. So when I ask my students what could be improved in this, they'll see the chain hanging down, but they don't see the 3 people standing where they shouldn't be standing. Now, since an animal is a visual thinker, in the mind of cattle, the person on the horse is a different picture than a person on the ground. So maybe the cattle are really tame to the rider on the horse. First time they see the rider on the ground, that's something new, and they freak out and scatter. It's a different picture. You need to train them to both. This is just a picture of one of my curved handling facilities that takes advantage of the natural tendency of the animals to go back to where they come from. You see, you want to use animal behavior to help you handle them. You want to work with that behavior, not be working against it. And that's just a little simple, economical facility where they come on back to where they're coming from. I do have a few books on cattle handling on the book table. All right, let's get into how associative thinking works. It works like Google for images, but instead of bringing the images up like a light table, showing them all at once, they come up sequentially. That's the way they come up in my mind, just the way the movie showed it. Shoes. So I'm seeing childhood shoes. I wore these little Mary Janes, really hated these shoes. Much better memories associated with these shoes. And how about those childhood memories? This is the shoe I wear right now. Now I'm seeing the things I have stepped in these shoes. How about a big mud puddle? How about some dog you-know-what outside a really nice venue on the lawn? We're not going to show that, but I'm starting to now go through the file of the things that this boot has stepped in. So that's how you get from a boot to a mud puddle. You see how there's a logic to it. There's a logic to associative thinking. It is not random. And associative thinking is related to a lot of creativity in thinking. You can go onto the Google Scholar and look up autism and creativity and autism and intellectual giftedness. A little bit of the trait will give you, maybe a gifted person. Because a brain can either be made more social or a brain can be made more thinking and cognitive. At what point is that an abnormality? In the 50s, I went to college with a lot of geeks and nerds and that was who I went to school with. Okay, 60s is when I went to college. I went to college with kids that I know would be diagnosed on the spectrum today. They all got jobs. They own businesses. Working in the cattle industry, I know a guy who has a bad stutter, a dyslexic, ADHD, probably be autistic, horrible student, took welding, started building things and selling them. He now owns a metal fabrication business. You see, as I go back and forth between the autism world and the construction world, I worked with construction for 20 years, all through the 80s, early 90s, late 70s, staying in junky motels with construction crews, some of the funnest stuff I ever did, some of the hardest stuff I ever did. And I worked with some guys that were kind of quirky, but boy, they were creative. And now I'm seeing that kid today getting addicted to video games, the junior edition of the millwrights that I've worked with. And right now, in the agriculture industry, they're very concerned about replacing these people. They are retiring now. Trucking companies are going crazy right now. They can't replace mechanics. There's a huge shortage. Some of the meat companies are advertising on billboards on the highway for industrial mechanics. These are good jobs. It also takes some really creative kinds of thinking. Now, here's evidence that the different kinds of minds actually do exist. I found scientific papers when we were working on the autistic brain book. I was so happy when I found these papers because it verified what I had observed just in talking to people at different meetings. Okay, there's one of my drawings. We've got a little bit of a computer compatibility issue here. It's not showing up as good as it could be. So when you're weird, how did I solve my work? One project at a time. The first sign painting job I had when I was in high school was for a beauty shop. And then I started putting some plastic pages together with pictures in it. Now today you'd have it on your phone, selling your portfolio. If you're good at making computer code, then you put some of the computer code up on a LinkedIn page. When you're weird, you sell your work. So when you go into the interview, you just put your work out there and show it. Okay, now it's going to be on iPad, so you better make sure it's charged. I used to joke around that I had a big visual thinking circuit in my head. Turns out that I do have a big visual thinking circuit in my head. And that circuit's going from the frontal cortex all the way back to primary graphics files. Now that's a circuit for speak what you see. It goes from the visual cortex up to here. A bundle of fibers speak what you see. This scan was done by Walter Snyder at the University of Pittsburgh. This is what's called high-definition tensor scanning. And it can actually dissect out, in a live person, the fiber bundles. And it has the ability to test, is this a bridge like this, or do they intersect? The scanner can figure that out. So that's a normal one, and that's mine. I got a lot of extra branches. That may explain why when you put a keyword in, I get all these pictures. But I paid a price for that. I have less fibers for the speak what you see. So when I was a little kid, I had trouble getting my speech out. Also, when the grown-ups talked really fast, it went into gibberish. So my speech teacher would slow down, enunciate the hard consonants. She'd hold up a cup and she'd go, cup, and then she'd go, cup, and she'd go back and forth between saying it slowly and saying it fast. Now this is where I've got a real problem. The math department, working memory, kind of got wrecked here. You're working with kids that are different. Do not load working memory. Let me explain to you what you mean by that. Long strings of verbal instructions in a sequence do not work. there's something that requires a sequence, give them a pilot's checklist. So let's say they're going to get them put them to work at McDonald's. Ice cream machine take apart. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Cleaning steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. Reassemble, 1, 2, 3, 4. Give them a pilot's checklist. Okay, set up for the cash register. Pilot's checklist. Do not load working memory. Now, that is something that is a real problem area. And there's a lot of people that can't do algebra, but they can do geometry. But I'm seeing too many kids. They say, you got to take algebra to take welding? Really? I don't think so. Okay, I tried computer programming back in 1968 on the state-of-the-art IBM teletype. Bill Gates had access to this same computer. He could do it, I couldn't. So where does innate ability matter? I think innate ability matters the most on extreme ability, like something like musical ability, art ability, math ability, and on extreme disability. Then in the middle, there's a whole bunch of plasticity here in the middle. I was exposed to computer programming. No, that just simply didn't work for me. Now I want to show you how the pattern thinker thinks. This is not my mind. And I found this picture of this extreme origami. This praying mantis is made out of a single sheet of folded paper. No cuts, no tape. And what you see in the background, that's the folding pattern. And I go, wow, that's not my mind. That's definitely not me. And there are some origami stars some kids made. There's some more really cool origami. And when I asked the astrophysicist about church steeples, he got motion of people singing and praying. I go, oh, wow, trippy. This guy worked on the Hubble Space Telescope, and I'm pretty sure he was undiagnosed on the spectrum. There's two ways you can do the math, the word way or more visual spatial. Don't get hung up on whether the kid, which way he does it. All that matters is that he does it. Or whether you learn reading with phonics or whole words. If phonics worked for me, for another kid, that's not the way to do it. And what they're trying to do is make some of these kids explain their math. No, these kids don't work that way. In construction, it's all about the outcome. So I see a smart kid who's playing video games in the basement on Social Security. That just drives me crazy. Because then I now see this old hippie. He's retiring now. He's the head of the maintenance shop for a large plant somewhere in the U.S. And he gets to play with giant Legos and do all this fun kind of stuff, much more fun than video games. And Junior's not going anywhere. And they're the same person. Or I see a 12-year-old, and I'm seeing too many of these kids getting too coddled. They're not learning basic skills like shopping, shaking hands, ordering food in restaurants. You got to stretch these kids. Otherwise, they're not going to develop. And Mother really knew how to stretch me. Okay, more studies to show that there really are the different kinds of minds. Okay, let's look at different ways to look at thinking. Associational versus linear. You see, you need to have both. The linear thinker helps on the organization. Because when I've done my books, I've worked with some great co-writers, Katherine Johnson, Animals in Translation, Richard Panik, Autistic Brain. They provided the organization. You know, it's sort of like they make the tree, and then I put the Christmas ornaments on it. Pictures and patterns versus words, bottom up versus top down. Yes, and I have got to read more about the commencement speaker you're going to have tomorrow, but he probably did a lot of bottom up thinking. And yes, that is part of science, rather than top down. You make a grand hypothesis first, and then if the data doesn't fit into it, you know, but sometimes you just go out and you discover stuff. A brain can be more social, or a brain can be less social. At what point does it become an abnormality? You know, who do you think would have made the first stone spear? I don't think it was the social yak-yaks around the campfire, that's for sure. And the bottom-up thinker uses specific examples to form concepts. It's bottom-up, it's not top-down. So you've got to get these kids out doing stuff to fill up their mind in a lot of web pages. So the Google that they come with has got stuff to search. Let's look at a lot of personality traits like a music mixing board. You can be more anxious or less anxious, more visual, less visual, more musical, less musical. It's a continuous trait. But now when you think in language, they're treating them all the same. Too often I'm seeing something like a bright 12-year-old in with a class of very, very severe individuals on the autism spectrum. See, the problem is, especially as they grow older, they need different kinds of services. Young kids, I looked horrible when I was 3 years old. And I was very lucky to get into kind of an ABA intervention program. Mother took me to a neurologist who recommended a speech therapy school. Okay, what would happen to Albert Einstein today? No speech until age 3. Where would he go today? How about little Stevie Jobs? He was a weird loner who brought snakes to school. And he did lots of hands-on things when he was a kid. I think that really helped him out. Also, on a product like the iPhone, Steve Jobs was an artist. He didn't know how to code. Somebody else had to code the inside of the phone to make it work. He made the interface that's easy to use. The engineers had to make it work. I'm worried that too many kids with all these different labels are just getting screened out, getting marginalized. Because I worked with a lot of really quirky kind of guys, people that would be hired as a draftsman to lay out an entire plant. Lay the whole floor out, complicated stuff's done by the draftsman. And engineering's going to be doing refrigeration and the roof trusses. Yes, and we got to have both those things. But he doesn't lay out the clever equipment. Okay, Betsy Morris, she's written an article in Fortune magazine and a book on dyslexic CEOs. Some of these dyslexic people have the vision to be really, really good at business. Or the head of JetBlue had ADHD. So he was really good at selling to investors, had some challenges on operations, especially the snowstorm at Kennedy Airport. And how about the head of IKEA? Both dyslexic and ADHD. He's done good. We've got to start looking at what the person can do. When I was a young child, my ability in art was always encouraged. Build on the thing that the kid is good at. But I had to learn how to do art other people wanted. Mother would always encourage me to paint something different. Let's paint a beach. When I painted a really nice beach, she put it in a professional frame. You know, Steve Jobs was the artist. Engineers had to make it work. Now, I'll give you another reason why we need the visual thinkers. You need them to prevent messes like the Fukushima nuclear power plant mess. When I found out why this happened, I couldn't believe it. I can't design a nuclear reactor, but maybe I need to work on their safety systems because I can visualize how it can break. And the only thing I need to know about this is if the emergency cooling pump does not work when it's needed, you're in a lot of trouble. So the pump and the generators that run that pump were in a non-waterproof basement. This was by the sea. So when the seawall got breached by the tsunami, the basement instantly filled up with water. Well, you know what I figured out? It's not that the engineers are stupid. It's that they don't see it. This is where you need the visual thinker to go, oh boy, we better get some watertight doors and we better get them put in here. Then the second problem was social. They never called for help. That is beyond my understanding, how you could allow breach of containment to take place, because there's nothing worse than that. Okay, I'm concerned today that too many kids are getting too far removed from the world of practical things. Practical things teach practical problem solving. When I was a young kid, I would spend hours making bird kites to fly behind my trike, hours making parachutes that would open when I threw them up in the air. Experiment and experiment. One design doesn't work, make another design. Also, the hands-on things that I did gave me things to do with other kids. When I was in high school, bullied and teased. The only places I was not bullied and teased was horseback riding, model rockets, and electronics. Get involved where there's a shared interest. We've got a huge shortage of skilled trades, and right now the average age of people in farming is 50. And you know what? You can't eat iPhones. We need to have people in farming. It's a really important thing. I am a big supporter of FFA programs. I was really had a great time, went to the Pocahontas High School outside of Memphis, went to their FFA banquet, and these kids were just doing such a great job. One girl took a robotics class, so she's going to electrical engineering. And they just built a new chicken plant near there. And I said, you know what? They're going to have some good millwrights and mechanics to maintain that plant. And these are jobs that require skill. And some of the degreed engineers that are good with the math can't do the millwright stuff. I've talked to the people that repair substations, electrical substations. We go, oh no, we got this college graduate engineer, he wouldn't know how to fix a substation. Okay, here's the stuff that saved me. Horseback riding, hands-on stuff. I got interested in cattle because I was exposed to them at 15. See, it gets back to being exposed to stuff. And I was also learning lots of work skills. Went away to a fancy boarding school, learned how to run a horse barn and clean horse stalls. I also was doing a lot of carpentry work, and I didn't do very much studying for about 3 years. But you know what? I wasn't allowed to become a recluse in my room. I had to be at breakfast on time, sit through classes, be on time. Time management was a non-issue. I had a lot of other issues, but that wasn't one of them. And when I was getting my master's, I started painting signs at the Arizona State Fair. That's me up there painting the Himalayan monster, real stupid exhibit. It was a wax dummy and a freezer chest full of ice. So how did I end up getting that job? I showed an old sign painter a portfolio of the signs I had made. See, that gets back to selling the work. With hands-on stuff, we need to be doing a lot more of that. I'm a big fan of things like maker labs, hackathons, robotics, cooking classes, theater, music, choir, band. In some schools, I travel all around the country, some high schools you can learn math, English, and sports. That's about all you can learn. I think something is wrong when a school raises $400,000 for a new track but takes out band because they lack funding. I think there's a real problem. And a student is much more likely to get a career in music than they are to get a career in track. It's just that simple. Okay, let's get kids interested in engines. You know, they've moved all the auto mechanic stuff to the community colleges, and they're doing a good job. But the problem is, it's almost too late. We need to be getting kids hooked on engines when they're young. So I go to a lot of rural areas. I just was in a rural area at this FFA meeting. I said, let's get a retired mechanic to open up fixing up broken lawnmowers in his garage. That's something that would be for free. You know, so the 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds can find out engines are either fun or engines are yucky and dirty. But they need to try it, find out if they're going to like it or not. Khan Academy, all kinds of free classes like programming classes. Okay, a lot of people want to be a game developer. Well, you either have to be able to do the kind of art that you see in a video game, or you're going to have to do the coding. And the 4 hot languages are JavaScript, that makes Minecraft work, C++, Ruby, and Python. I went and looked up the web page. I couldn't even begin to do it, but at least I know the names of the languages. And the thing about that kind of a trade is you could write some good script. Let's say you make an app for a phone, then let's put it up online and show it off. You can say, now here's the app, this is how it works, a videotape of the app, and then here's the code behind it, and this is how this works. So, got interested in cattle because as a teenager, I got exposed to them. Now there's all kinds of free platforms for promoting yourself. This book, The Martian, started out as an engineer's blog. Then it became a 99-cent Kindle book. It was free to put that up. And then it took off. You have all kinds of platforms for promoting things. But the problem we got with autism is when you think in words, you put them all together. I'm looking at this kid and I'm going, wait a minute. I saw kids like that, you know, loading the UPS truck. That might be a really good thing for him to do this summer. You know, I see the kid, I don't see the label. Okay, starting in construction, my first jobs. There were people in the cattle industry that were bad, but there also were people in the cattle industry that were extremely good. It showed some of the good ones and some of the bad ones in the movie. The people that were good were some of the construction people, owners of feed yards, manager of the Swift plant. The bad people were the cowboy foremans, that level of management just below the owners. And there were some people that seeked me out. There were also people that mentored me. There's a scene in the movie where they slam down the deodorant and say, you stink, use it. That actually happened. I was really upset at the time, but now I thank them. And then when I criticized some welding and I said it looked like pigeon doo-dooed on it, Harley, the plant engineer, pulled me into his office and explained to me I had to apologize to Whitey, the welder, that was inappropriate talk, and if I didn't like the welding, I should have come to him. He just explained to me what I should do. But I found that construction has affected how I think. It's all about finishing jobs. You've got to get it done. Okay, so how did I sell jobs? I wrote articles in magazines. I showed off a portfolio. I would do cattle handling classes. Show off your work, not your interviewing skills. And then there was a contractor named Jim Uhl who seeked me out. And I was afraid to go, and he kept encouraging me. And then when I got asked to design the first dip vat that was shown in the movie, I said, give me 3 weeks. Because I figured before the internet, it would take me 3 weeks to get concrete reinforcement drawings. I didn't know how to do that. You see, I was at the 60% level of a job, and a lot of women are too scared to take a job at the 60% level. Now, I said, give me 3 weeks because I had to learn some stuff. And I went through the door. I said, give me 3 weeks. Now, I've seen guys that might be at the 20% level take a job and try to take it without learning the stuff, and I've seen disastrous messes. Disastrous messes when they wouldn't listen. And one of the biggest messes I ever saw was when somebody out of the sales department tried to run a construction project, totally underestimating the amount of time it would take to build it and not listen to anybody, and it was a disaster. And that's the stuff that I had to get figured out how to do the reinforcement rod. There's Jim Uhl, the contractor. Yeah, he got interested because he started seeing the drawings that I had made. There's one of my drawings. Okay, that's the recreation of the dip vat and cattle handling system that they built for the movie. I love the fact in the movie they showed my work stuff. I'm really into work stuff because work stuff is what's given my life meaning. And there's cattle coming up into the original dip vat in Arizona. Okay, put your portfolio out there. LinkedIn. Use a magic word forum. Music forum, band forum, theater forum, programming forum, art forum. You add that word forum, pulls up a whole different set of web pages. Here are things to get into coding. Facebook Hacker Cup, Google Code Jam, Top Coder, Code Forces. Put your stuff up there and show it. They're hiring just based on portfolio. There's all kinds of ways. The door is there. Most people don't see it. Get your work out there, but don't put rubbish up on it. I remember, I was at my aunt's ranch, and she got a job at the military base teaching school, and I wanted to show the military guys my sign painting. Well, I made the mistake of showing him the sign I'd made for my aunt's third grade classroom. It said the word herd lives here with a paper collage on it. That did not impress the soldier. The implement dealer sign would have been a lot better. You got to put the right stuff in the portfolio for the right client. It's just that simple. There's my brochure for my business. I used this brochure along with a big fold-out drawing, a couple of plastic pages of pictures, and a couple of articles in meat magazines. Used this to sell Cargill. This is back in the late 80s. Sent it to Bill Fielding, the CEO of Cargill. Opened it up, 30-second wow. Nothing about autism here. And I had the right stuff in it. It's not 4-color printing because back in those days, 4-color printing was very expensive. Okay, let's get a little respect for skilled trades. I'm going to be going on an airplane tomorrow. I've got to fly to Los Angeles. And there's a lot of complicated stuff there when you take the covers off. Let's get a little respect for skilled trades. I want to make sure this works tomorrow. Let's respect the people who build it and the people who maintain it. And when I've had mechanical problems, the planes had mechanical problems, they're getting old. I see them at the airport. We need to get some of the young ones off the video games and show them that maybe jet engines would be fun to work on. All right, let's just finish up and talk a little bit about ag. And that's another great field that a lot of kids ought to be getting into. And a lot of young people today are interested in where their food comes from. But one big concern I have today is young people are not reading deeply enough about any issue that they're interested in. I go on a plane, and I no longer see them taking garbage bags full of newspapers off the plane. I'll be on a large airplane, and I'll be the only one with a newspaper. Since the iPhones came out, I can't believe people are doing on iPhones on a plane. They're not reading anything serious. I still see paperback books. I'm seeing Kindles. But I'm not seeing news. Well, big laptops are just for work. They don't drag those out unless they're going to do work on it. But I'm worried people aren't reading deeply about things. Way too shallow. I think it's a real concern. And millennials are interested in where their food comes from, but there's a tendency to just sort of get a knee-jerk reaction, that something's either good or bad. A lot of students have never been on a farm. We also have a lot of students today that have never done anything with their hands at all. Cooking, sewing, woodworking, welding, musical instrument. And when you do things with your hands, it doesn't always work absolutely perfectly. Then you got to figure out a way to make it work. Well, I think it's not really good when 50% of young adults in England cannot connect pigs with bacon. That's a real problem. And I've worked a long time working on improving the meatpacking plants. They've gotten really good now. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know about it. That's why we started making things like beef plant video tour with Temple Grandin. When the slaughterhouses work right, they work really, really well. There's a lot of things that have improved. Okay, you want to see how a big dairy works or a big pig farm works, you can go to Fair Oaks Farm outside of Chicago. It's open to the public, big gigantic dairy, really nice dairy. They've got a calving camera you can actually look at over the internet. They got a big pig farm, and you can actually see how these things work. And I think that's really a good thing. People need to know how stuff works. Then I asked them, what's the most common sort of strange question you get asked? And people of all ages are asking them things like, are those actually pigs? I go, what? You think they're Disney animatronic pigs? Really? This is really getting too far away from the world of real things. It's a concern. Okay, one of the things that all the apps have done is making people get worse in their silos. There's a paper you might want to look at. It's called Measurement of Online Social Bubbles, or the tribalization of communication, where people just tend to communicate even worse within their silo. One thing I like about the newspaper, and I buy a Wall Street Journal, New York Times, I'll drag them both on a flight, and I'll leave a mess in the airplane from cleaners to clean up. I like my news balanced, right and left. But what I like about it is I can look at the front page of that paper, there's 10 different things on that. Where if I look at the paper on the phone, I might not even see these things. There might be something there and go, oh, that's interesting, and I wouldn't have even looked at it otherwise. I'm worried about things getting too narrow. We got to work on tearing the silos down. And I found this picture online of a hydraulic jaw nibbling a silo, not just blasting it, nibbling it. It's hard. We really have to fight the silos. And this is one of the problems looking at, the ag world and the world here. There's, go out way out in the country, you've got a lot of people out there working really, really hard on the farms, crop farms, chicken farms, and whatever kind of farms, and they don't know anybody in the big city. Because the survey data has shown very, very clearly that the person that the consumer is most likely to believe is an actual farmer or rancher. We have huge amounts of land in this country where there's no way to crop it. Only way you can raise food on that land is a grazing animal of different types. There's no other way. I went to the Australian outback recently this fall. Real interesting trip. Get on a small plane in Darwin and fly 2.5 hours in a barren twin-engine propeller plane. Can land on a dirt strip. Cattle station in the middle of nowhere. You can raise cattle there. There's enough water for that. There's not enough water for crops. You don't understand how vast the outback is until you see it. Yep, I've been there. It was a real trip. Okay, you got to show kids interesting stuff to get them interested in interesting things. I got interested in optical illusions because I saw it in a movie. My science teacher said to me, but you got to figure out how to make it work. Got to figure it out. And my interest in optical illusions helped me in looking at some of the things that cattle were balking at. And there's one of my designs done in SketchUp, free software. It's free, three-dimensional drawing software. And there is 3D printing. And I think it's real interesting that MakerBot warns here that you gotta have patience. Yes, it's a diddly little glue gun thing, and if you get mad at it, it's not gonna work. You're gonna have to be patient with it. And what I want, we're gonna go into the question period now, is I wanna say, students and people on the spectrum, whoever they are, be everything that they can be. Because when you're in construction, you gotta get the job done.
That was wonderful. We're going to have some time for questions, and I think the microphones are going to be set up down here in the front. So if you wanted to ask Temple questions, please come up to the microphones, and maybe I'll ask the first question.
All right.
As I mentioned in the beginning in my introduction, I work at the Center for Oxytocin and Social Cognition, and we're trying to understand the social brain, and we think that maybe if we understand some of the neurochemistry that helps us be engaged with others and to communicate with others, that we may be able to improve social functioning in autism. But then you mentioned about some of the more famous people that are probably on the spectrum, Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein. So the concern is, if we do something to improve one aspect, such as social cognition, maybe we take away from some of the other special abilities that people might have.
Well, I think the brain can be made more social or more cognitive. And I found a very interesting article last year on the internet about wolves versus dogs. And when the wolf watches another wolf open up a puzzle box, he pays attention, and then he opens the puzzle box and learns from the other wolf. Domestic dog is so busy looking to us for help, pay enough attention to the other dog opening the puzzle box to open it. So it's more cognitive or more social emotional. At what point does something become abnormal? I'm very much into career, but if we totally change that, maybe Einstein wouldn't have done what he did. I go out to Silicon Valley. I see computer programmers that are in their mid-20s to late 20s. And then I go to an autism meeting, and I'm seeing the same kind of kid. He's 13, but it's the same geeky kid. And one geek's going to play video games in the basement, the other one's going to the Googleplex. I'm a visual thinker, they're the same kid. If we would totally get rid of all the autism, what would happen to all the quirky, Mozart was pretty weird. Artists, Van Gogh was really weird. Mathematicians, what would happen? We might be losing something. See, I think a little bit of the trait gives some advantages. Too much of the trait gives a huge disadvantage.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm going to ask the second question, and then we're going to rotate. We'll go from this side to nobody's over here. So,
well, maybe we won't rotate.
If someone shows up, we'll go back and forth this way. So please just line up. We have about 30 minutes for questions, but thank you so much. So at the Emory Autism Center, some of the things that we try to do is really work with that individual and think about what are some of the key skills that are going to help them be engaged in their life, be able to communicate, be able to have choices, be able really to have a good quality of life. So Temple, I'm curious, as for you, how would you define a good quality of life for yourself? What does that mean to have a good quality of life? And also, how might that be different for somebody who does have a lot more significant challenges, who may have severe
Well, you see, this
safety
is all
issues?
very abstract to me. Little kids get the language going, teach the turn-taking, manners, please and thank you. If you have somebody who's more severe, we got to deal with bathrooms, showering, dressing. We're going to have to get that out of the way. One of the things that really improved my quality of life was when I went on antidepressant medication in 1980. I had constant panic attacks all the time, went on a low dose of antidepressants, and that stopped the constant panic attacks. And it has to be a really low dose. If you give too high a dose, it's going to be bad. The other thing I learned in working with all these really creative designers, they're all on Prozac. And when I went out to the Emmys, I talked to people there, like wives. One was a wife of a very famous movie director, which I will keep confidential. And we discussed what medication he was on and how that helped him to function, because it stopped the constant anxiety. I mean, it's not very good quality of life if you're in a constant state of fear. So, okay, what would that be like? Let's say we lock this auditorium up, we turn the lights off, and I'm going to put 20 of the most poisonous snakes in the world in here. Now, just imagine, the fear, that you would have. So that's certainly not a good quality of life. But to me, having a good quality of life is having interesting things to do. That makes life interesting. You've got to work on expanding their world. I can't emphasize enough, we've got to fight the recluses in the room, we've got to fight the video game addiction stuff. And in my book, The Loving Push, we got a big chapter on that. And Deborah Moore, my co-author, found a hideous PowerPoint presentation that was done at a game developing conference to make video games more addictive. We've got to work on expanding the world. Then you gradually replace it with something else, like maybe auto mechanics or maybe coding. Something that they can turn into a job. Because I worked with a lot of kind of quirky guys I know are on the spectrum, and I think most of them had a pretty good life. Where a diagnosis helped is in their relationships. I've had people walk up to me in the airport and say, now I understand my engineer husband. And I've got a book out there called Different Not Less. 14 old Asperger's, and they had paper routes from their kids to learn how to work. They got diagnosed later in life. They're all in good jobs to help straighten out their relationships. That's where the diagnosis helped them. I think in some cases, the diagnosis is holding them back on the work front. Because as I go back and forth between the farming world, cattle world, I'm doing things at tech, and then I'm seeing all the gray hairs that are my age that I know were on the spectrum. They had good jobs and good careers and kind of fun careers.
Thank you.